2025 has started as one of the slowest housing markets on record, but surprisingly, the prices didn't really fall until now. In July, for the first time this year, we are starting to see signs of Vancouver housing prices starting to crack, even though the sales are up. The articles say there are signs of recovery, but are there actually? In today's market update, I'll show you what's actually happening beneath the surface with hard numbers and custom graphs. First, let's take a look at the sales numbers for 2025. This is a custom graph that I created based on the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver's sales figures. As you can see, July has actually been the most active months on record so far, with 2,286 sales. The next closest month was May, with 2,228 sales. As you can see, the graph is going up. The sales momentum is building. And if you look at the sales figures for every July over the last 10 years, as you can see, it hasn't been as strong as some of the other months that we have seen on record. However, it hasn't been the slowest month. It actually has been the third slowest month behind the July 2022 and July 2018. It is also slightly behind July 2024 and a little bit more behind July 2023. So sales figures alone are not looking as depressing as they have been looking over the last few months. And if we focus on the sales figures alone, the case could be made that the market is on a path of recovery. However, if we look at the prices, they tell a slightly different story. This is the graph of benchmark detached housing prices since the beginning of the year. As you can see, from January until March, the prices have actually been going up. However, ever since March, we are on a downwards trajectory, and July has been quite a bit lower than the previous months. In July, the benchmark price is $1,974,400 for a detached house in Greater Vancouver, as opposed to March, where it was $2,034,400. That is a pretty big swing in just a few months. If you look at the benchmark prices for townhouses, the story is somewhat similar, however, on a much smaller scale. Again, the prices are the lowest they have been all year. However, as I said, the swings are not as dramatic. And for condo market, the story is again very similar. The prices are going down pretty much ever since March. Anyone looking at these graphs, especially the detached housing market graph, can clearly tell that the prices are going down. And if we look at the graph of house prices over the last 10 years, they tell a very similar story. Right now, the detached house prices in Greater Vancouver are lower than what they were in 2022. That's really how slow the real estate market currently is. If you bought in 2022, likely you will sell your house for less than what you paid for it. If you look at the townhouse prices, the story is somewhat similar. The market is a little bit more flat than it is with detached houses, and the prices are slightly up comparing to 2022, but not by much if you take into account all the other expenses. Again, if you bought in 2022, sort of at the height of the market, you're probably losing some money on your townhouse, and townhouse currently is the most resilient type of property at the Vancouver real estate market. If you look at the condo market, the prices actually haven't changed much since 2021. And again, that's what I'm seeing looking at a lot of condos with my clients. I see people buy their condos in 2020, even some 2019, and currently they're not able to get the same price as what they paid 5-6 years ago. If they bought at the height of the market in 2022, 2023, they're losing even more money. So the condo market has not been doing as well, but it hasn't sort of crashed as a lot of people were expecting with such slow market conditions. So the natural question becomes, why is this happening? Why are the sales up in July, but the prices down? It's a bit of an anomaly. It's a bit of a paradox. I think it all has to do with the fact that we had many slow months in the past. We had a lot of inventory accumulate on the market, not enough sales to clear all the new listings that were popping up. And data backs that up. If we include inventory levels into our sales figures over the last 10 years, remember 2018 and 2022 were the two slower months on record than this year, 2025, but the inventory levels back then were much lower. In 2018, there were 12,137 listings. And in 2022, there were 10,288 listings, significantly less than what we see today with 17,168 listings. The inventory levels have really skyrocketed this year. And this disconnect between the sales figures and how much inventory is available on the market is what's really driving a lot of prices down. There's just a lot of inventory. There are a lot of choices for the buyers, which is of course good news for the buyers, but not such good news for the sellers. In fact, if you look at months of inventory over the last 10 years, this graph shows us if no more new listings came to the market and the sales numbers stayed the same as we had this July, how many months would it take to clear that inventory? Currently in 2025, the inventory levels are so high that months of inventory is just under 8 months. It's significantly more than what we have seen over the last 10 years. And if we were to zoom in into 2025 specifically, so sales to inventory figures, the things got a little bit better for July than what we saw in June. The inventory levels, in other words, how many listings there are on the market, has gone down slightly, and the sales did go up. So that gap was closer than it was in June. That is good news. And also the months of inventory has gone down to about what we have seen in April. So the highest peak that we have seen months of inventory so far was last month, June. Currently, it's looking a little bit better, but still pretty bad. This good news about inventory levels shrinking and sales catching up, I would take with a bit of grain of salt because historically speaking, July and August are relatively slow months in terms of new listings. A lot of people want to wait until fall time to sell their property just because kids are out of school, you have visitors coming from out of town, perhaps you are traveling yourself. So listing in July and August is not as popular. Also, a lot of people take their listings off the market for these months and then relist back in September. So naturally, levels of inventory would go down. In other words, this drop in levels of inventory, this drop in months of inventory might just be a seasonal anomaly, more so than the actual recovery of the market. Of course, I'll try to keep you updated over the next coming months to really see, was that a seasonal anomaly or is that actually market recovering? Next, let's take a look at the number of new listings for each month of this year. And again, the news here is pretty good. In July, we haven't seen as many new listings come to the market, partially due to the seasonal effects, like I just explained, and probably partially due to the fact that the sellers that really needed to sell have probably already listed their units for sale, because the total number of listings is so high that, of course, over time, the number of new listings will be shrinking because a lot of listings are already on the market, if that makes sense. So here, just for your reference, is how many new listings we have seen on the market each month. The levels have been dropping since April, but of course, that's roughly when the levels of inventory started to accumulate. So what does all of this mean for the market moving forward? I think at the moment it's too early to tell. Are we starting to see signs of recovery with sales going up and inventory levels going down? Are we starting to see the market actually cracking with some of the real estate prices going down? Time will tell. At the moment, we are at the weird point of time. July, August, as I pointed out, is a bit of a strange time with a lot of people going on vacations, etc. So I think moving forward in fall, we'll really see, is the market breaking or is the market recovering? I'll try to keep you updated on this YouTube channel. Please subscribe so you don't miss those videos when they come out. Now, in terms of other important news that have happened in the real estate this month, first of all, the Bank of Canada has decided to hold their key interest rates. This was somewhat expected. I think most experts agreed that the Bank of Canada will likely hold their interest rates. However, I think there is some debate currently whether we will see more interest rate cuts by the end of the year. And of course, time will tell. The second thing, the market rental report came out and the rents again keep on dropping. National average rent has gone down by about 2.7%. The drops have been more extreme in cities like Vancouver, Coquitlam, Burnaby, North Vancouver. For instance, in Vancouver, the rents have dropped by about 7.2% in year over year for 1-bedroom condo and 7.1% year over year for a 2-bedroom condo. That's quite an aggressive drop, However, Vancouver and the Greater Vancouver cities are still the most expensive in Canada in terms of the rental rates. From what I hear in Toronto, the rents are dropping even more, especially in the last few months. Lastly, I want to give some words of wisdom after being a real estate agent for 11 years to both buyers and sellers. For sellers, it is most important to price your property correctly. If you price it too high, you will simply sit on the market for many months without any activity, because right now there are so many different choices for the buyers. For the buyers, my advice is really know your market, really know what you're looking at. Like for instance, my clients and I are looking at downtown condos, and all of the condos are sort of priced similarly. However, once in a while you get this outlier sale that is well below everyone else. This was a seller that really needed to sell, and your job as a buyer, your job as the buyer's agent is to find these types of sellers, because you can score some great deals. Like I've seen buildings that have all the sales around $500,000 to $520,000, and then you have this anomaly one listing that sells for $460,000, $450,000, prices that I haven't seen in many years. Or to give you another example, my clients and I are looking at duplex properties, and there has been this property that popped up in June at 1.6, then they gradually reduced the price to 1.4 over the last 2 months, and finally they sold at 1.334. So they have sold for $250,000 less than they originally listed this duplex for. Once again, they were in a situation where they really needed to sell, so their price reductions have been very aggressive. And the reason why I'm telling you all of this is because when you are a new buyer to the market, you might assume that everyone is just going to reduce their prices the same way. But that's not how market works. Whoever needs to sell more will be more aggressive with their price reductions, will be more proactive and more lenient in the negotiations, versus someone who is kind of stuck at their price. They will just try to keep that price, and if they can't get their price, they will simply take the condo off the market. So your job as a buyer in this market is to find the sellers who are in the situation where they have to sell for one reason or another. Maybe divorce, maybe they found a different property that they have to move on. Maybe they just simply bought a long time ago where the prices were a lot lower. So even though the prices are down from their peaks, they're still in a healthy situation where they're making enough sort of profit and they can sell. So that's my word of advice. Be proactive and know how the market works. I can't tell you how many buyers I talk to and they're just kind of expecting that all the prices are just down the same way and everyone is in the same situation. But that's not the case. I appreciate you watching this video all the way until this point. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more videos like this in the future. I know these statistics videos can be a little boring. I do my best to make them as fun as possible, but at the end of the day, we're looking at some graphs and talking about numbers. That's as fun as it can get. If you're a first-time home buyer and you're looking for a way to get started, I have an absolutely free buyer's guide linked in the description below. Check it out. If you're curious, if you're already a seasoned buyer, or if you're a seller and you're looking for some advice, feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to help if I can. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye.